of One. This is a show, a program that has been developed to show that one person actually can make a difference. So thank you for watching today. My guest today is Hilary Thomas. She is the creative director for Lineage Performing Arts Center. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So as you know, the program is about identifying folks in the community who are making a difference. And I always think it's fascinating to think about someone's hopes and dreams. So I'm sure you started dancing at a young age.
I did. I started before, I was told I was dancing before I could walk. So my entire life, every memory I have is kind of one that involves dance in some way.
So, but for a lot of people, they have a passion or a commitment at a young age, but then it's hard as an adult to keep that going. So I think part of your story that's really fascinating is the fact that you have parlayed this into a pretty exceptional, maybe not traditional career, but an endeavor that brings in a whole lot of other people along the way. So how did you manage to do that?
I'd like to say that I all had it carefully crafted and calculated, but I just kind of kept stumbling into what I found I loved, and more, I think, as my passion continued to drive what I was doing, people came along and joined me, and it just snowballed into what it is today. But I knew that after I was done with college that I wanted to keep dancing, but I wasn't necessarily going to pursue a traditional dance career. And so I thought, what can I do to keep dancing and to kind of keep all of the things that are important to me alive? And so I thought, well, I'm just going to do just this one thing. That'll be it. And there was an organization called Young and Healthy in Pasadena that I remember very specifically. They sent their annual ask in the mail, and I was reading it, and I was like, oh, they're doing such cool things. I don't have any money. I can't give them any money. What can I do? And I thought, I will put together a show as a fundraiser for them, and that'll be that. And so I kind of gathered together some talented friends. I had a trio of jazz musicians from Caltech, and pieced together a group of people, and we put on this performance for Young and Healthy, and this was back in '99. And had a great time doing it and raised lots of money for Young and Healthy. And I thought, well, that was way more effective than the check that I couldn't write to them. Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe we'll do this again. So we did it again for another organization, and then it just kind of kept happening, and soon organizations were approaching us saying, hey, we want this kind of unusual fundraising opportunity. And I was so lucky that I had these dancers in the very beginning who were so dedicated to the cause and really jazzed about doing something that felt a little bit more meaningful, I think, than most of the performance opportunities we'd had in the past. And so from kind of an early stage, they were game for anything. And one of the dancers once said, hey, when do we go on tour? We said, okay. And we just kind of piled in a van, and we reached out to organizations all over the country and said, this is what we can offer. We would like to put on a benefit concert and kind of raise awareness for your organization in this way. And so we had these we've seen some really interesting parts of the country that I had never heard of before, because it was all kind of contingent upon who was interested in this opportunity. And then we all piled into a van, and just, a few summers in a row, we just would spend the whole summer driving, dancing.
You did it more than once?
Oh, yeah. We toured a lot. And we had a great time.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, you're in your 20s and you're a dancer, you're traveling the world.
Yeah.
But every time the objective or the goal was to align with community-based organizations in those towns and do a performance that would raise money?
Yeah. And so that's what we did. And what we found was so kind of exciting about it was that not only were we able to connect with these organizations and feel like we were making, a tiny difference in what they were doing, but we were also introducing dance to a whole new group of people that maybe wouldn't necessarily go see dance. And then it started to evolve that we were actually creating the shows for the nonprofit, so that if we did a performance for an organization, we've done a lot of work with breast cancer organizations, for example. So we designed a show that was very specific
for that particular
community,
topic,
so that there was a little bit more relevance to the performance, and that now what it has evolved is that we actually try to bring in various constituents from the nonprofit or from whatever issue that nonprofit addresses, and integrate them into our shows, whether it's through storytelling or through featuring their artwork or their music or whatever.
I find it so fascinating that out of I would say challenges, we become a little bit more creative and imaginative. So out of at least at that point poverty, where and that's actually the default too. Is I'll just write a check and I'll make everything better. But what you've done is actually created a relationship, and that has, I think, a deeper impact.
Certainly for me. I mean, it feels much better. I mean, if I could write checks, which I still can't, then I would.
Not very big ones.
Not big ones. But, it's great to be able to go out and connect with organizations in a deeper way. Yeah,
and it provides them with visibility as well that they might not have, because you're having an event that bringing people to it.
Yeah.
So let's sort of move forward to the Performing Arts Center and that whole, because I think you've managed to maintain, at least to a certain extent, that relationship with community-based organizations. So how is it, or how did you get there?
Yeah.
And then I'll ask you about how it's structured.
And we've really evolved quite a bit, because we were this dance company in a van working with nonprofits, and then we moved.
Did you have it on the side?
Yeah, no.
Lineage?
We would rent them. We had dreams of buying a van, but that didn't quite pan out for us.
Volkswagen van.
Yeah, of course. But we partner with organizations in kind of a different way. So, we may be able to do a benefit for them, but really what we are more interested in is kind of telling their story and creating art out of their mission. And so this Performing Arts Center, which we opened in 2010, just kind of, we weren't really sure what direction everything was going to go at that point. And but we knew that we needed a space, because we had been kind of nomadic for a long time, and even just within Pasadena, we were working, the Armory was so wonderful, and they opened up their doors for performances, and we were performing in schools, and we would perform at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium, and it was just a challenge, because there weren't a lot of theaters that were, it was either kind of non-traditional spaces or giant theaters that were very expensive.
Impractical.
Yeah. And so we thought, well, we need this performance space in Pasadena, and maybe other people would like to use it too, and who knows what will happen with this. And so we opened the space, and what has unfolded has been just amazing to watch. And so, as I look back over now almost 8 years of being in this space, the community that we have been able to build, which we wouldn't have been able to build if we weren't in that, in any space, because people now come to us and people want to hang out there. And so we have a number of people from various cross sections of what we do.
But when you say people, do you mean individuals or groups or organizations?
I'm saying literally individuals who want to come and hang out. However, groups and organizations now will hang out in kind of a different way, in that they'll want to come and, work with us on an event, or we have partnerships that occur regularly. So they're hanging out there by default, but it's just the kind of place where I feel that people from the various kind of arenas in which we work now, which I'll talk about a little bit. I haven't really gotten there, but they just kind of come and stay and just want to hang out and watch rehearsal and watch a class, or come see a show later. And it's so nice that this community that's now such a family keeps growing, with people who kind of didn't know that they needed their creativity maybe a little bit more heightened in their lives. And so that's what I feel like we are kind of now, is that catalyst for creativity.
Right. So kind of a two-part question. How do you build community, or how do you build community, and how do you know that it's actually healthy or working?
That's a great question. I don't have a very calculated answer for it. What we have done is I'm very proud of kind of the open, accepting accessible vibe that I think we put out. And one of
inclusive, right?
Inclusive. And one of our strongest programs that has been growing, which started as one very small idea and now has kind of branched out into the community, is our Dance for Joy program. And it started we were doing a show called The Brain in Motion, and at that point we were doing a lot of work kind of trying to show the way the inner workings of the brain through dance and through dialogue, and just kind of getting people to have kind of a basic understanding of how the brain works, which, you know, I realized not everybody really has an understanding of that and the parts of the brain, and because it's totally complicated. But in doing that, we were doing some research, and one of the dancers saw a special on the Mark Morris dance group who was doing a Dancing Through Parkinson's program. And we were studying specifically Parkinson's disease because of the brain and what it can do. And she said, you know, I think we need to try and start some of these dance classes too. And I said, okay, let's figure out how to make it work. It was another, in building community, I think one of the things that maybe to a fault has gotten us where we are, but you know, sometimes can get me in trouble, is that I have trouble saying no to anything. And then, in fact,
the helper mentality.
I have a very enthusiastic yes that often accompanies most ideas, especially when people are coming to me with creative ideas and I can see that this is something that they want to do, and I feel like, you know, if I now, especially with a space, have the ability to help make that happen, I'm gonna try and figure out how to do that. So she came to me and she said, let's start these classes. And I said, okay, let's reach out to the Mark Morris people. And they came out and did training for our teachers. And
but training in dance or in the methodology to work with Parkinson's? Training
in the methodology to work with Parkinson's, because all of my dancers were trained dance teachers. But this is a little different. I mean, it turns out it's not quite that different as one might think, and that all of our dance training has kind of led us to this place naturally. But we did the training with the Mark Morris folks, and that was amazing. And Huntington Hospital was partnering with us in the beginning. This was even just right before we got our space, so we were teaching classes at Huntington. And we had this core group of people that would attend the class, and it was just this small, tiny little seed of magic every week. I mean, there were just a few people there, but what we saw and the transformation we saw with these people who were not dancers coming in, and yet suddenly they were dancers. And now, 8 years later, all of that seed community, they all identify as dancers for sure.
Well, that's an example of building community, is that whole notion of creating a space that's inclusive, allowing people to flourish in the space, and providing them with support or direction, and then being consistent. Yeah, absolutely. And we try to do that. We try to do all of that.
Well, it sounds like you did. And so in terms of building community, that's kind of what happened. And so people then started really coming to this class, and then we had some people who were recovering from strokes that were attending the class, and then that kind of naturally lent itself to, well, let's do a stroke recovery class as well, because we found that the benefits were just as powerful with stroke recovery.
Is it a different therapy, or are they similar?
You know, it's a similar approach that we take, so we don't ever try to claim that we're doing physical therapy or anything like that, because, and that's specifically why we call it Dance for Joy, because we, if you ever are around, especially on our Wednesday classes, Wednesdays at 2 o'clock is our massive class, and this is the one that started so many years ago, and there's so many people in the class, and after the class there's food and there's a little party that happens inevitably, and then we
every week,
yeah, and then we start rehearsal. The company starts rehearsal, and a lot of people will linger after the class and watch rehearsal or continue eating or talk to me about their ideas that they have of what they want to create, and so that's kind of how it looks now.
But when you say massive, is that like
I mean,
10?
There can be between 25 to 30 people in the class, which is massive in our space. It feels massive because
that's huge.
There are a lot of people, and their caretakers and their family members, and And so that is just kind of building community right there, because we want everybody to dance together. This class is not just for people who have Parkinson's or any of the other classes that we have. It's really just to give an opportunity for people to dance together. And that's something that, being trained in classical ballet, was not something I necessarily picked up on, was that sense of what incredible joy dance can bring people if they can just kind of let go and allow themselves to dance, which is a hard thing for people to do.
Well, that's what I started thinking of. I have several friends and acquaintances who are hesitant to dance or to move in that way.
It's very common.
So imagine if there's a caregiver or a family member who comes and wants to make sure that their family member is taken care of and participates, but then you say to everybody around the room, well, you're going to dance too, and they're like, no. How do you make it safe for them?
That's really hard, and it's even hard for the people. If somebody comes and has a movement disorder that is not comfortable dancing, and now not comfortable moving in general, it's going to be a really hard thing to ask for them to take a dance class. Very early on, my stepmother actually was one of the first. She had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and she was one of the first people in the class. And she would come to every class like this, and she was so forced into it, and she was not happy with the idea. And within 2 classes, she was calling me up to ask about certain routines she learned and music that was being played and things like that. And I think
so. She was asking about Eminem and
exactly. Yeah.
She really got up to speed.
It really resonated with her. And so I think what happens is they realize, these are not dance classes as we normally think of as dance classes. So there's no, point your foot, hold your leg up here, turn 50 times. You're welcome to do that, but that's generally not what happens. People are sitting around in chairs in a circle, and if people are not mobile enough to stand, they can stay in the chair the whole time. And so it's really about kind of letting go and allowing oneself to move with the music, and then starting to learn how to express, and actually using choreography as a tool. So everybody in the class ultimately starts to create their own choreography based on whatever we're talking about that day.
And that's actually another question I wanted to investigate was a lot of people either feel inhibited as creators or they don't know how to express it. So what are the conditions that you're providing that enable them to essentially flourish as creators?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. I think that it is, the people who are teaching these classes, Michelle Kolb, who teaches many of the Parkinson's classes, Erica Lynn Priolo also teaches the classes. They naturally have a way about them that people are drawn to, and they've got this kindness and this kind of light that makes people feel comfortable and at ease. And I think that's really important, because certainly many dance teachers, the traditional dance teachers don't have a reputation for being the kindest, most warm and fuzzy people. But there's a serious warm and fuzziness about these classes, and the love that you see between everybody is huge. And now the relationships that have been built over 8 years amongst all of these people in the Lineage community is really incredible to see. And I see it over and over as people are, if somebody's struggling, or if sometimes with this particular thing, if people are hospitalized, everybody else is reaching out and going there and dancing with them in the hospital or playing music. And it's a really neat thing to see.
Well, it's so healthy on multiple levels, psychologically and emotionally, of course, to have that kind of network around them or a feeling of support. But also physically, it's getting up and moving, which a lot of people become sedentary and they forget how to move, which shouldn't be our inclination. It should be a little bit different. So we don't have a whole lot of time left, and there are a couple areas I wanted to make sure we touch on. And one is youth. And so what is Lineage's relationship to youth, and how do you serve young people, and especially kids here in Pasadena, Altadena?
Well, we've had a wonderful relationship with PUSD and teaching in the schools. So Erica Lynn, who I mentioned before, is has this incredible connection with young people, and she represents Lineage out in the community teaching, and she's been at Elliott Arts Magnet for, gosh, I think we've been there for 3 or 4 years now. I'm not sure how long that's been, and she's now at Altadena Elementary, and last year was at Sierra Madre, and kind of available to do various things. She's done stints at PHS, setting pieces on the students. But I think what she brings and what we try to bring to the schools is kind of igniting this love for dance. And that's something that is relatively easy to do with young people, because their natural inclination is to want to move if you can approach them in the right way. Yeah. And then to make sure that they feel safe enough to be able to express themselves and to be able to create their own choreography and use their choreography as a way to kind of process things that are going on in their world. And I know that for me, that's how I processed everything, growing up dancing, and so it's nice to be able to pass that tool on to others.
Do you want to talk at all about one of the performances that you created to work through a traumatic experience that you had? Is there one that comes to mind?
There is. Most of the shows that we do are about other people, and that's been my safety zone, is that I will hear somebody tell their story and I'll feel inclined to want to choreograph their story and share it. And one of my best friends growing up here in Pasadena was a musician and part of my real creative driving force, and he also suffered from bipolar and was suicidal throughout most of his life, and about 6 years ago he did commit suicide. And we had a very complicated relationship, but he was a musician and wrote all of this music for me to choreograph to, and had written and recorded it all. And he had never, I hadn't really done much with any of this music. And so I thought, well, to honor him, I am going to create just something for his family and for us as kind of, just a very private way of sharing how, what's going on with us. And that turned into a show that we've done probably more than any other show that kind of addresses suicide and a lot of other issues based on my own personal life. And it was the most freeing thing I've ever done to just, share all of my innermost secrets in a performance, which I didn't think I was going to want to do.
Well, that's not our inclination.
No.
It's to hold it as tight as we can.
Absolutely.
Because if we let it out, then it's real. Or it's more real. But that's great to know that it was therapeutic. Yeah,
it was. And so we're still doing, it's just amazing. This is one of those shows that we can't seem to stop doing, because it's such a relevant topic now, and we didn't really know what we were tapping into.
It's really powerful. It's a great piece, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Kind of to segue into a little bit different area, and kind of our conclusion is, what do you think about dance as a political act, or is it viable to be used as an activist or an advocate for? And if so, in what ways?
Well, yeah, of course. I think that dance can be an incredibly powerful tool for anything that can get people talking and feeling things maybe on kind of a visceral level that they weren't feeling things before, that sometimes words can't always state. And so I don't know if dance can have any more particular power in the political arena than it can. In some ways, we're getting political by trying to get people to talk about suicide in ways that they haven't before, or to get people to talk about, last year we were addressing homelessness, and in a way that they hadn't before. And so we don't really have a political agenda specifically in that way, but it kind of naturally tends to happen because we're dealing with so many kind of important and heated sometimes issues, and trying to present them. But I think that it can be totally powerful, like if there's all these marches and things that are going on in this world, any kind of art can bring more power to that and bring the community together in ways that make people feel like they're really having a shared experience.
And it's one thing to march or to protest or to rail against, whatever oppression there is, but it's another to bring creativity into it, and march dancing,
Yeah,
or protest dancing,
absolutely.
or maybe do a pirouette when you're speaking to the powers that be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are you, big picture, what would you like to accomplish this year?
It's a great question. I think I want to be able to just continue to do what we're doing, which for me, I'm so proud that I'm able to work with so many people, so many incredible musicians and actors and storytellers, and then community members. And that's what's so important to me, is getting to tell stories of regular people in the community and give them a little bit of a twist to that story, and give them some, some dance and some music and things like that. And so for me to just be able to kind of do more of that and make it, I guess, easier for me to reach more people. I don't know how exactly that's going to happen, but I would just need a little bit more time and a little bit more, I don't know what.
Well, I mean, part of that too is encouraging other people within the group to do similar type of work.
Absolutely, yeah.
So whether it's, one of your other dancers or, your director, so that it doesn't have to be just you.
Right.
Is there any project that you have planned coming up that?
Yeah, we're actually doing something very interesting right now. It's been interesting for me because I've been doing so much reading on it. But we are working on death education right now, which is, very broad. But we are working to just kind of open up the conversation about death, which right now is an incredibly taboo topic.
Absolutely.
And this was inspired by my really good friend growing up who lost her partner a few years ago, and he worked with us in an artistic arena. So we're working on a show really about her, and it's her story, but her vision and what she wants to do is get these conversations happening. So we're going to actually be doing workshops that are, I don't know if you've heard of the 5 Wishes.
Yeah.
We're doing some 5 Wishes workshops with art tied in, and writing and movement. And
so can you tell everybody where Lineage's Dance is located?
I sure can.
We'll wrap things up.
Yes, Lineage Performing Arts Center is 89 South Fair Oaks, just on the corner of Fair Oaks and Green Street.
Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank
and we'll
you.
get people to go down there and check it out.
All right.
Okay. I think we're supposed to
Keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.